Hello, everyone. Welcome to Government Contractor Chat. We are going to get started now. Please kindly mute yourselves and go off camera until the Q&A portion. I am Lindsay Riegelsberger, Director of Operations and Business Development for Streamline Government Contracts. Streamline helps small to mid-sized government contractors who seek experienced, effective support with contract management that reduces risks, increases profits, and enhances reputations. We do this by negotiating teaming agreements, subcontracts, preparing estimates of completion when necessary, and speaking to contracting officers in their own language. We are the proud organizers of Government Contractor Chat, and we thank you for joining us today. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker now. Shirley Collier, president of Scale2Market and host of Growth Masters Federal Podcast, is a nationally known speaker, author, serial technology entrepreneur, and federal business development management consultant. For over 30 years, she has worked in various areas of information technology and innovation management and university, government, and private industries, including starting, managing, growing, and selling for technology firms. Her most recent company, Scale2Market, developed the highly popular Davy Growth Framework for high growth government contractors and the entrepreneur's playbook for early stage companies desiring to prosper in the federal marketplace. Let's welcome Shirley Collier.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, the way I'm going to approach this topic is sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we're going to start with the bad and the ugly, and I am going to turn my camera off while I present just so I'm not distracting. Okay. So let's start with what is happening in the federal government, just some facts to level set. 275 government employees have been fired or laid off. That includes about 75,000 that have taken the fork in the road and about 220,000 probationary employees. This represents about 12% of the workforce. We started the year with about 3 million employees. DOGE reports that their goal is 20%, so we expect additional layoffs to occur. However, as many of you know, the courts have been very active. As of yesterday, I think the count is 327 lawsuits have been filed against the administration. They cover everything from civil rights and immigration to education, federal funding, civil service. So we don't really know the final result of all of these actions. We're just dealing with reality on a daily basis. What has happened as a result of the layoffs is that those of us who support the federal government, many of our customers are no longer there, and we're not sure who the decision makers are. So it has been a challenge to connect with our clients. And because of reductions in staff, there are delays in government operations like disaster response, tax collection, public services. That has significantly hindered the effectiveness of federal agencies. However, there is good news in terms of the money that continues to be spent by the federal government. So the 2025 budget that was recently passed last month represents a 1.4% decrease over 2024. Money has been taken away from education, EPA, CFPB, USAID, and HHS. However, money has been given to Department of Defense and, of course, DHS for CPB and ICE. In the current budget, 2025 fiscal year, $750 billion in discretionary spending remains. Now, in a normal year, the money would need to be spent by the end of September. But for the first time in history, this year, Congress gave the president the authority not to spend all of that money. So we anticipate that not all of that $750 billion will be spent. But let's assume that $100 billion will not be spent, and that the budget kind of comes down to $650 billion in discretionary spending, which is what it was in 2019. 23% of that is 149 billion, and by law must be spent with small businesses. So $149 billion will need to be spent, will most likely be spent by the end of September. All agencies have been asked to reduce their headcount and quote unquote unnecessary spending. So all contracts are being reviewed. If you have not had positions or contracts canceled, they probably will be in the forthcoming months. The big guys are losing contracts as well. Deloitte lost 129 contracts worth 372 million with an M. Booz Allen, Guidehouse, Accenture, Leidos, and many others of the largest have had their contracts terminated. Most of those big contracts were concentrated in strategic consulting, and they were primarily at HHS, CDC, and NIH. Modernization efforts, IT modernization efforts, which have been ongoing for many years, unbeknownst to a lot of people in America. They think that modernization is just now happening because of DOGE, but that's not the case. Many of those existing modernization efforts have been reduced, but not terminated. However, one of the things that I have seen recently is an unprecedented number of J&As, justification and approvals, being awarded to big companies. So these are awards that have not been competed. And we're going to be talking about the role of small businesses in getting direct awards here in a minute. So what can you do if you have had positions removed? There are a couple of things. What I used to say a couple of months ago when this first got started is to reach out to your elected officials, especially if you have Republican representatives that can put in a good word at the White House and get many of those positions reinstated and contracts reinstated. That no longer works. However, federal employees can justify contracts that have been terminated or positions that have been eliminated by DOGE. So I will be sharing with the audience after this presentation a memo that was sent out by DOGE to federal agencies with questions that the federal agencies have to answer, as well as the form that the agencies must fill out to substantiate reinstatement of individuals or contracts. But there's also something interesting happening right now. Federal employees are beginning to fight back, especially those that are left and those that really understand the operations of the agency and the contractors and the individuals that are valuable and important and mission critical. And I want to give you an example. I have a client that is a woman-owned small business, aerospace engineering company. They've been doing business with the FAA for over 20 years. One of their major contracts was coming up for recompete. This was last fall. The FAA, so it was a small business set-aside contract. The FAA decided upon recompete to reclassify that contract as small disadvantaged. So my client had to rush, get disadvantaged qualified so they could recompete for their own contract, which they did. And in January, they were awarded the recompete. Well, like most awards, it was protested. It's part of a big program at FAA, big safety and risk management program at the FAA, which of course is very important. It's been in the news a lot. A couple of weeks ago, the CEO of this woman-owned aerospace engineering company got on Sunday night a memo from DOGE saying, "I'm sorry, but your contract's been terminated." So the next day she called her customer at the FAA and they said, "What?" They were totally unaware, and they said, "We'll get back to you." So they got back to her and said, "We're going to give DOGE the win, but we're going to take all of your people, we're going to keep them, and keep them in your company. We're just going to run them through a different contract vehicle. So they called one of their large prime contractors that has hundreds of positions, and there's always a lot of openings. And so they moved the team in mass under a different contract vehicle, doing the same work at the same rate. What we understood was that the DOJ committee only canceled those contracts that were designated disadvantaged. My speculation is that they could not imagine that a small disadvantaged business was doing mission critical work. And that's just my opinion there. Okay, some of the other things that are happening with the federal government is contracts are being consolidated under GSA. You probably saw the executive order that came out in March for this. So procurement of common goods and services, which includes IT, are all being consolidated under GSA. So we expect by mid-June is when they're supposed to have more information out about that. But there's new information coming out daily. That is also one of the websites that I'm going to be sharing with all of you today. There's also an initiative, as you are aware, probably, that the FAR is being rewritten. So FAR 2.0 is being described, is intended to speed up procurements, but it also could eliminate some small business advantages. So the initiative is to strip from the FAR anything that's not mandated by law or that leads to good procurement outcomes, whatever that means. So there are a lot of people, including the FAR Council that created the FAR, that's going through and looking at every section of the FAR. As we know, there's 53 parts. They've already produced 2 parts, and is expected, or is required, according to the executive order, that all 53 parts will have been revised by mid-October. Normally, under the Administrative Procedures Act, there will be a public comment period on these. My understanding is that they're dispensing with that for this purpose, so there will not be a public comment period on the intended changes of the FAR. However, my understanding also is that they are asking for comments now from the public, which means us, government contractors, on which sections of the current FAR that we think need to be modified. However, I have not seen that link. I have not seen the mechanism by which we can give that information. If any of you have seen that and can share it with me, I appreciate that. We're trying to stay on top of this as much as we can every day. Okay, so those are the facts. I now want to share some of my opinions and my advice. I want to go on record as saying I'm vehemently opposed to the approach that's taken by the White House and DOJ. I've had to downsize businesses before and lay off people, and there's a way to be thoughtful and purposeful and humane, and that's certainly not what I've seen from DOJ. I remember when I first heard about DOJ last fall, and I was thinking government efficiency. Oh my gosh, I would love to serve on that committee. Having done business with the federal government for over 30 years, I see a lot of the inefficiencies and some of the regulations that I think are unfair to small businesses. But of course, then when they started with their shenanigans, I certainly don't disagree. However, it's important for us to remember how we got here. The federal budget grew from $4.4 trillion in 2019 to $7.5 trillion in 2025. National debt is at $37 trillion. The budget that was just approved last month has a deficit of $4 trillion. We now spend more money on interest than on national defense for the first time in history. Our credit rating has been downgraded. Bond yields are up, which means that we will pay more to borrow in the future. So we have to do something. The purpose of DOGE, if you look at the executive order, the purpose of DOGE is to modernize federal technology and software to maximize government efficiency. We haven't gotten to that part yet, and I am hoping that we get there. One of the things that makes me mad about the way DOGE is going about doing their task is that they're missing out on an unprecedented opportunity. We all want to see a more efficient government, and we all want to see them using more modernized technology. But what I can tell you from talking to large prime contractors in this marketplace is that despite their current contract losses, they are salivating at the planned IT infrastructure investments that are coming in 2026 and beyond. So this is my advice to small businesses. This is not the time to hunker down, lay low, or ride out the storm. Smart GovCons, especially small GovCons, are partnering with agencies, with their clients right now to find efficiencies and to plan for an injection of innovation. They don't want to wait for Elon's guys to come in and impose their solutions. So my advice to my clients is to talk to CEOs right now and talk to PMs. Let them know what you can do. And if you have existing contracts and you already are working in certain agencies, you know where the inefficiencies are. Change your messaging on your website, your case statements and everything to reflect White House priorities. Look at the wording in the executive orders and parrot that back regarding efficiency, quality, IT modernization, and so forth. And I also suggest that they evaluate and pivot their strategies. So document your past performance and the results that you've been able to achieve around efficiency and modernization, and focus on the impact that you have had with your clients. Understand agencies' priorities, they're changing on a daily basis. But I think that small businesses are uniquely positioned to act quickly and innovatively. Large companies know how to scale, but innovation comes from small companies. So the federal government needs small businesses now more than ever. I also recommend that you identify and protect your intellectual property. IP is not always technology. It can be your methods and your processes. Invest in artificial intelligence across the board. Robotics, if you're into the hardware side of artificial intelligence, of course, data management, agile, DevSecOps, and cybersecurity. Agile, the way I have heard people refer to the need for agile in the government going forward is like agile on steroids. So many companies use agile, especially in application development, and agile in business processes. But I think that there will be a huge demand for companies that really do understand business process re-engineering and to use agile methods, because one of the big problems we have in the federal government, of course, is that systems are siloed. So if the intention is to integrate these very complex systems, even within one agency, it requires systems understanding and the ability to understand the existing systems and what a new system should look like. And there are not very many companies that have those capabilities. And surprisingly, there are a lot of small companies that have unique experience, deep experience in this area of expertise. Be prepared to compete against large companies. The rule of two most likely will be eliminated in FAR 2.0. And for those of you who are not familiar with the rule of two, this came out during the last administration. It is that if during market research, an agency determines that there are at least two small businesses that qualify to do the work, then it must be set aside for small businesses. It has not been eliminated yet, but because it is not codified in law, we are expecting that that will go away. I recommend to my small clients that they sharpen their strategy, distinguish themselves, solve a complex problem for the federal government, and be better than the competition. So I have a number of things that I'm going to be sending out to you. That's the end of my formal comments. I have a number of things that I'm going to be sending out to you afterwards, including the Doge memo, the GSA consolidation website, the website that is monitoring FAR 2.0, information about the DoD software fast track initiative, and also a bill that's going through Congress right now that provides a $50,000 incentive for small businesses to become CMMC certified before the deadline. Okay, so do we have any questions?
Yes, please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat. And I know I have a few for you, Shirley. So I'll just start there. One of the items that we were kind of talking about earlier was so many layoffs. How does one find out who the government decision makers are?
This is a time to use all the human intelligence that you have. Talk to your partners, your teaming partners. Use LinkedIn. I'm finding that a lot of current and recently laid off federal employees are on LinkedIn. So that's one way to find out. I went to an event that I spoke at last week, and I was approached by a lady in the audience who took the fork in the road. She was a contracting officer at GSA, and she approached me and said, I have a lot of information about who's left and who's not, and kind of what they're thinking, if I can help you and your clients. So I'm finding more and more of those types of people, former federal employees. I mean, they have some restrictions on what they can and cannot do, but there is freedom of speech, so they can talk about what they know. They just can't represent companies back to the agency.
Okay, understood. And then how can GovCon stay abreast of all of the changes coming out of the federal government?
Well, it's very hard. I'll be sending you some websites to monitor a couple of the others, in addition to the ones that I just mentioned. A couple of the others that I monitor is whitehouse.gov, specifically the executive orders, so that I can advise my clients objectively. I have read every word of every executive order. It's exhausting. They're not long documents, but to kind of stay up with what the directives are that are coming out of the White House. The other website that I have bookmarked is OMB and OFPP specifically. So I will send you all of those links.
Okay, sounds good. So, those of you that did not hear us say, please do drop your contact information in the chat, and I'll be happy to get those, or Shirley will be happy to get those out to you. And also, please don't be shy. Your questions in the chat, we're happy to see if we can answer them today.
Are you open to
Should I?
oral questions? Can you take questions online? Can I
Sure, yeah.
speak the question? Right? You want me to write it out?
Hi, Paul.
Go ahead,
Hello, how you
Paul.
doing, Shirley? How you doing? Hi, Lindsay. Given the great presentation, I came in a little late, so maybe I missed it. But given the centralization of so many of the contracts, the GSA vehicles going to, the GSA headquarters as opposed to the agencies, is there any reason for small companies not to accelerate their application for a GSA multiple award schedule? I've got a couple who are on the fence, and I'm kind of encouraging them to go forward quickly,
Yes,
but I want to get your
definitely.
view on it.
Definitely go forward with your
Yeah.
schedule. We really don't know what the new structure is going to look like, but my guess is that they're going to expand the schedule concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Okay, great. Um, and then should a GovCon reach out, or anyone reach out, Shirley, to the Doge committee members?
Initially, I was advising my clients yes, but what I'm seeing and hearing right now, and I'm going to send you a list of all the Doge committee members so you can kind of get a sense of who they are. They're all from Elon's companies, so it's SpaceX, the Boring Company out in California, Tesla. They're all very busy executives, and they're not as active anymore.
Okay,
They're burning out,
understood.
which I don't blame them. They're going back to their jobs.
Okay,
But what has happened is that Doge representatives, quote unquote, members of the agencies are now considered members of the committees. So once the department heads were assigned and approved, many of the SESs, Senior Executive Service, were replaced by administration loyalists. So the efficiency message is now being carried not just by the committee members, but internal policies and communications are reflecting the administration's priorities.
that makes sense. Again, any questions, don't be shy. We're here to do what we can to answer them, whether contractual or just growth strategy. Shirley is the expert. So I'll stay on for a few more minutes here, just see if anyone has anything, and then we can go right into what's coming up next.
And if you think of a question afterwards, because I kind of threw a lot at you,
Yeah.
if you think of a question afterwards, please don't hesitate to reach out. What I want government contractors to know is that we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure it out. I am confident that we will prevail, that small, honest, hardworking, innovative companies are needed by the federal government. Our customers, federal employees that are our customers, are in pain right now. There's a lot of confusion, anger, to a great extent. They're frozen in fear. I was talking to a lady last night. She's actually with the state of Maryland, but she's a liaison to the federal Department of Defense specifically. And she said that they were putting on a big conference. And so they invited their normal partners from the Department of Defense to come to this procurement fair, like a small business office and several other program offices. And in the past, they've been very collaborative, very cooperative. You know, we're real close. They don't have to travel long distances. They just hop in their car and drive for 20 minutes. And she said, they're not showing up. They're not confirming, and it's in 2 weeks, and they're not confirming their attendance. So a lot of federal employees are just frozen in fear. So be compassionate, be understanding, reach out, help them, help them get through this with your ideas on how to make the government more efficient and more modern.
Great thoughts there, Shirley. We have a question from Dan. What are you seeing in the M&A market for small business given the current environment and expected change to the SBA size standard recertification rule in January 26?
Yep. It definitely has impacted the M&A market. So the rule that he's talking about that goes into effect in January of next year is that a large that buys a small, and the small has a prime position on a GWAC, that's a small business set aside. The large, if they buy the small, they will not be able to perform on that small business set aside GWAC. Currently, they can. In the future, they will not be able to. So I think it's definitely impacting valuations. It's impacting deal flow. I work with a lot of people that are in M&A for GovCon. It's definitely impacting it. However, on the positive side of things, smalls buying smalls has increased. So this is a really good time if you're a relatively larger small business. So if you're more in like the 20, $30 million category, and there are other smalls that are in the 5 to 10, and they have some specialized capabilities, contracts, relationships, this is a really good time to buy.
Hey, I like that. It looks like we have concluded our questions. Well, Shirley, any final thoughts before we go into what's coming up next?
I don't think so. I just want to reiterate that I know that this is a very stressful time for government contractors, but I also think that there's an unprecedented opportunity, and now is the time. Don't wait for FY26. Now is the time to reach out to your partners and reach out to your clients, and even to reach out to new agencies where you don't have a presence and educate them about what you can do. I mentioned that there's a lot of J&As coming out, justification and approval. So there's a non-compete contracts that the agencies can justify that there's no one else that can do the work to advise them. I think there will be opportunities for advising agencies on how they might approach some of these innovation-driven projects through direct awards, either through the SAP, the Simplified Acquisition Procedures, or through the set-aside programs. As you know, up to $4.5 million can go to SDBs, small disadvantaged businesses, in a non-compete manner. So now is the time to be out there messaging, talking, and positioning yourselves for new contracts 2026 and beyond.
That's excellent. Well, let's take a look at what's coming up next, Shirley. And thank you again for your valuable insights. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and I always know everyone's going to get many nuggets of value. So, great to have you again. Our Government Contractor Chat complimentary Zoom webinar series will be the third Wednesday of each month, excluding August and December from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Wednesday, June 18th, we will have David Stearman, owner and CEO of Proposal Strategy and Development Consulting, presenting Pivot, Contracting Success in the Doge Era. Wednesday, July 16th, we will have Ben Madden, HR SME and owner of HR Action, presenting AI plus HR, transforming talent management and federal contracting. To register for these webinars, you can scan the QR code on the screen now. Thank you for your time today. We'll see you in June.